Hello, good morning. Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing the Twitch TV API from freeCodeCamp. This one is pretty interesting. I actually got stuck on it my first time through, but I've kind of broken it down for you. And I'm going to start off kind of like I did with a previous one with an overview of the program flow. I'm going to show you kind of how I want you to set things up. I'm not really going to walk you through that much HTML and CSS this time. The reason being, I am going to show you the functionality of what you need, and then I'm going to show you where you can add in more things. All right. So the idea is that you're learning more as we go along, right? All right. So let me share my screen and start off a little bit with the functionality that I'm looking for. All right. So here we go. Here's a basic Twitch TV JSON API. We have a link for freeCodeCamp, all right, that tells us whether we're online or offline. All right, when you click this link, you can see it goes to Twitch TV/freeCodeCamp. And I have a list of people that either I follow or you follow. Actually, this is just the list that freeCodeCamp gives us. So that's just what I used here. Did something pretty basic. All right, so there we go. All right, that's all we really need is something pretty simple like that. All right, so where do we start off with? Well, this is what I've done. All right. Now, I've created an array of people that are streaming that I want to look for. All right. So as soon as I start my program, I'm just going to declare an array of streamers. Say, okay, these are all the people that I'm following. All right. Now, what you can do is if you want to actually use this yourself and you want to see who's streaming and you use Twitch TV, you can actually do another one of these get JSON or AJAX calls and get all the people that you subscribe to, right? All the people that you want to know who they're streaming yourself. And so that way that can just stay dynamic. What I mean is as you add and follow people on Twitch, you can go ahead and pull that data out and then put that data in an array and then access that array. I have a pretty static array because I don't really use Twitch TV, so I didn't really have one to use. But it's just another way you can add another layer of complexity to your program to make this look really, really nice when you're finished. All right. The next is going to be a simple Ajax. All right. Another get JSON. And what we're going to be doing is just putting in the freeCodeCamp channel itself. And we're just going to take a look at the freeCodeCamp channel. Is it active? Are they streaming? And then I'm going to change one of my links, as you saw. And that link is just going to say whether they're online or offline. That's it. Just the text of the link itself in that anchor tag. And then here we have our main program. All right. Now this is going to be a little more difficult than just a straightforward one. Okay, you can see we've nested two JSON calls again. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a JSON call, an AJAX request, using channels. Okay, so there's different ways to get information. That way we can get different JSON data. When we specify channels, all right, what that's going to do is that's going to check for the channel itself. You get an error here if the channel is no longer active, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for that error message. And another bonus you get by making this call here is you do get a ton of information, including the picture, all right, that shows up with the streamer. I did not use the picture, all right. Again, that's one of those things that I want to kind of leave that for you to try to figure out. And all you really have to do is leave a space for that in your HTML and CSS and figure out how you want that to lay out. And you could just look on CodePen, or you can look on just kind of Google it and see what other people have done. All right, you can just type in Twitch TV API into CodePen, actually, and you can see how people have used the different images in different ways. It's pretty cool. Get some ideas from that, and then figure out how you want to lay out your HTML and CSS. So you can use the image, and this is where you would get the image and store that in a variable, would be in this first API call right here. And I'm just going to be using the error itself to filter out those accounts, all right? And that's really going to get into error handling, which you do see a little bit you do see it in the backend stuff when you get a little further along. So it's really good just to introduce that, all right? I couldn't get the shorthand to work at all, so we're going to be using the jQuery AJAX here, okay, which actually allows us for the error handling pretty easily too. Kind of lays it out nicely. I'm going to set a the streamer picture to a variable again, that's going to be optional. So I would just create a variable at this point saying current image or current profile picture, whatever you want to call it, and then use that to stick that inside of our HTML and CSS. Sorry there. Notice that once I get this channels, okay, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have a for loop, all right, and this for loop is going to be iterating through, all right. So I'm not just making one call here. I am making a bunch of calls, all right, using this var I. All right, that same thing we have here, array.length. So I'm accessing this array, and I'm making a bunch of AJAX calls. All right, so I'm going to get a bunch of AJAX data here, or JSON data here from my AJAX call, and then I'm going to do something with that. All right. So all I'm doing is making sure that the channel is active. If it's not active, I'm going to get an error message. All right. And then if I want to grab that picture, I can. Otherwise, I'm just going to feed that back in and get another set of JSON data using just this stream here method, which is another way you can get it. And I'll show you what that data looks like. That data is actually, that JSON data is actually a lot smaller and easier to see and easier to understand. So I'll show you an example of that as well. Once we get that data, all we have to do is append the data to the HTML. If you remember, we've used like place or render data in a previous thing that we've done. So we're doing the same thing, just overwriting with jQuery and using append or prepend if you want to do it that way, depending on how you want to populate your list. All right, and then optional here is I forgot my ending quote. That's kind of funny. Parenthesis. Place the channel image if you would like here. You could also place that channel image up here. Either way, it will work just fine depending on where you use that variable, because remember, the scope of the variable is still going to be inside of this bigger white box, so the variable will work in either place. Whew. All right, so there is the flow of our program. All right, you do have some nested calls here, and the reason it's this one's nested is because we're still using this for loop. All right, this for loop in the same way that we've used it many other times in freeCodeCamp to access the array. All right, so that's how come it's nested. They're not separate ones. You could generate a for loop here and then do another for loop and separate these two out, but there's no use having two for loops when you can kind of just nest this one inside. All right, so hopefully that's pretty clear. Let's go over to the Twitch API documentation. Again, you just Google that. This is what comes up. And you can see all of the things that we can access. All right. You can go over to like using the Twitch API. All right. It's going to talk about getting a client ID, which is going to be important. So again, you're going to need an API key. The API key that they have here, they're calling client ID. All right. So you need to do that. I'll show you where to find that at. So hopefully you have a Twitch account. If not, you're going to need a Twitch account for this. All right. So here is a query string parameter that you can use. You can go to something like users. The two I used was channels and streams. All right. And so here's a response in JSON data here, and you can kind of see what this looks like. And notice that we have an object. All right, and then inside of these objects, here's a nested, array here that we even have. So just things that you have to look for. So here's a nested array with 1, 2 objects in it. So again, be careful how you are accessing your data as we walk through this. Again, here's your root URL, and then remember after that root, okay, if you normally have that root, you're going to add in something else to there as well. All right, and that's where you start getting things. If you remember, like the question mark we add in to start feeding it in data. That's sort of the point right here that we start adding in data. So where are we at here? This is pretty simple. We don't really feed it in more than one piece of data once we decide that we want, after this crack in here, let's take a look back up here. After you decide whether you just want like user streams, whatever, then you just give it whatever user ID that you want. And then if you notice, what we're going to do is you can give it this blank client ID, but the way I'm going to do it is with this AJAX request. I'm going to send it to it in a header, all right, which is a little different because that actually seems to work versus this. I couldn't get this way to work, and I'm not sure why. I might have just been having a typo, but I actually did some research, and that's what I came up with that seems to work. So it works. That's what I'm going to do. If you want to kind of play with that, you can. All right, you can look at the callback parameters to get all the JSON P data if you like. And again, you can kind of go through this and really kind of fine tune how you're going to be making that AJAX request there. All right, so you're trying to get the JSON data. If you're in Twitch, all right, what you want to do is you want to go to Settings, Connections, and scroll down here to register your application. And I've already done this. And it asks you for your application name, your local host, all this kind of stuff. And you just click register. Now, I already registered, so I already have a client ID. All right. And it just says that make sure that you only have one client ID at a time, so that way it doesn't get all messed up, just like any other API. What I've done here, so this is my, I'll go back to my editor view. And what I've done is I've just set my I just set this right here as my client ID, and I'm just going to use that later. So all you have to do is go in, register your Twitch account, get your client ID set, and then we're going to go ahead and use that later. And then you can kind of come in, and what I'm looking for, the way I did it is I just used 2 separate divs, just the way I've normally been doing it. You can do it in one div. It's perfectly fine. And it can be something really simple. Again, we're looking for functionality first, and then we want to come back and then straighten everything up. Now, mind you, when you do that, we're going to be tagging. All right. So if you take a look in here, we're going to be tagging using these ID tags here, and then accessing those tags with jQuery. So as you change stuff over here later on, you got to make sure that your IDs stay the same. And if you're appending data, you have to make sure that the way data is going to be appended in here, all right, is going to make sense, so it's going to work. And that might take some trial and error at this point, but that's really good. That's kind of what I want everybody to see, especially at this point. You should be at the point where you can start doing some trial and error and seeing what looks good and what doesn't look good after you get the functionality in the JavaScript down that I'm going to walk you through. All right, so that's going to be the goal for this project itself. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. Make sure that you go through, you have your Twitch account, you get your client ID, you take a look at some of the documentation here, and we're going to set up some basic HTML and CSS for this. All righty, so I will be seeing you in the next video.